Hi, I'm Wendy with WendingPath. Got a video class attached here where we do a drawing on grief and dealing with some of the emotions of grief. Here's the finished product. Stick around, you can draw with me. And then at the end, I explain about my drawing club, Pathfinders. There's information in the links below. But we get together a few times a month to draw together on different topics, and it's $20 a month, and it's on Saturdays. So check it out if that's something you might be interested in. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad to see so many of you here today. I am recording this session, just letting you know. So if you decide to ask a question out loud, which is fine with me, that will show up on the recording. If you want to type in the chat, I'll do my best to keep up with that as well. So today we're going to talk about grief. Those of you who regularly get my emails will understand that it is a topic that is fresh on my mind right now. My father-in-law died about 2 weeks ago, and we buried him a week ago today. And it was a tough battle, very short, but still hard. He was a doer, and he died of ALS. And I can't think of a harder disease to die of when you've spent your whole life working physically with your hands and having to learn for the last 2 months of your life to be entirely dependent on other people to feed you and brush your teeth and everything else that has to happen. So it was tough for him and tough for us to watch. So because of that, grief is once again the topic on my mind. And if you've read my story on my website, you know that grief is something I'm very familiar with. My 16-year-old son took his own life in 2001. So it's a journey I have been walking for quite a while. So we're going to do a drawing today where we explore grief a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about grief first. I'm going to speak primarily from my own experience. Your experience is no doubt different than mine, but hopefully some of the things that I say will resonate with you and be helpful to you. The first thing I want to say is that grief we recognize as something that happens when someone dies, and certainly that is true. But grief is actually just adjusting to the world turning out to be different than we expected. So a death is, even when it's anticipated, is sad or can be sad. Sorry, turn that off. But we can also grieve relationships we lose. We can grieve jobs we lose. We can even grieve things that we expected but are harder maybe than we expected. I know some of us have experienced the loss of a child going off to college can be very heavy and feel like a grief. And it is a grief. We have to adjust to our world being different than it was when they were with us every day. So that's I think that's important to recognize. So we've all experienced grief, and it occurs. There are degrees. So the amount that maybe you loved the person, the amount that this person was in your life is going to have a more profound effect on your day-to-day life. If this person was in your life, or this relationship was in your life, on a day-to-day basis, the loss of it is going to be much more significant and take longer to adjust to. But I want to start by talking just for a minute about the 5 stages of grief, which are, I'm going to put in the chat here. This will be, for those of you who are in Pathfinders regularly, subscribing members, you will get, there'll be a paper that's uploaded with all the notes I'm going to put in the chat. But for those of you who aren't, I'll put a few things in the chat. If you want to copy them down, you can. I don't think they're going to be, there won't be that much, and certainly you have no obligation to copy them down. So the 5 stages of grief, as they're recognized right now in Western society, are denial, So if you think about a grief in your life, commonly, denial is very common. That is to say, we're not ready to face it when it happens. And the first thing we do, or one of the things that we do, is to deny that it's actually happening, act as if it hasn't happened. Another stage is anger. That can be anger at ourselves, anger at the person that's gone, anger at a stranger, anger at someone we want to blame for why this thing happened to us. But anger is one of the stages of grief that sometimes surprises people and can be hard to get out of. Bargaining is certainly surprised me. Haven't experienced it with the loss of my father-in-law, but I absolutely experienced it with the loss of my son. Many times I felt myself saying what I would consider to be gibberish prior to that experience about various promises I would make to God if he would bring my son back. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do better at this. Just anything to make my reality different than it was. Depression is not what is commonly referred to in our culture as clinical depression, which we treat with medication or different kinds of therapies. But depression, in that it looks like depression. It can turn into that other depression, but it looks like depression. That is, you may experience lethargy, loss of interest in the things around you, difficulty just doing anything, just engaging in any way. And that during the near the grief, the event of the grief, that can occur, and hopefully you move through that. And then acceptance. Now, when I read this list when I was grieving, I thought of it like I thought of most lists in my life, like a checklist. Denial, I remember that one. Okay, done. Anger, got mad, I'm good, check that off. Working my way through, thinking that as soon as I got through these 5 things, I'd be good. I would feel better. Well, surprise, surprise, that isn't the way it works. Grief is, some people describe it like waves. It comes in waves. It comes in stages. It comes and goes. Some days you're angry. Some days you're depressed. Some days you want to deny the facts of what has happened. Those are all okay. Those are all normal. That's all fine. That's what to expect. That's how grief works its way through your body. What happens if you don't deal with those things? What if you suppress any of those emotions that are trying to get out of you? You can have mental illness problems. You can have physical illness problems. You can have all kinds of long-term impacts on you. And anyway, so back to the subject at hand. So what happens? We can get sick. We can have long-term effects, and we can also not benefit from the way. Grief is also an opportunity. Grief is an opportunity for you to grow. And if your loss is profound, like my loss of my son, looking at it as a gift is very difficult. But you will begin to know you have moved your way through your grief when you can accept the idea that there are gifts even through sadness, even through the grief. So I was looking for some information before teaching this class, and I came across. I'll put this in the chat too. I came across this from a man named David Kessler, who has written several good books on grief, and he refers to the sixth stage of grief as finding meaning. So when we have gotten through the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and accepted the fact of the loss, whatever that loss is in your case, the next piece is finding meaning. And that is a clue that you are moving in a healthy way through the grief. If you're struggling to find meaning, it's a key or a piece of information for you that you have more work to do on clearing, accepting, making peace with what has occurred. And the reality is, what you're trying to do is get your psyche to completely accept the fact. So my son died, that is a fact. And for a long time, I didn't even accept that fact, right? Eventually, I accepted that fact, and then I was very angry and so on, moving my way through. But eventually, I didn't have a lot of those heavy emotions, and I was able to begin to look for gifts or finding some meaning, as he puts it. So that's a clue for you that you're moving through the grief. Um, and and then I found one other really good quote from him that I want to share with you because I thought it was so good. And I will use that. Each person's grief is as unique as their fingerprint, but what everyone has in common is that no matter how they grieve, they share a need for their grief to be witnessed. That doesn't mean needing someone to try to lessen it or reframe it for them. The need is for someone to be fully present to the magnitude of their loss without trying to point out the silver lining. So, what I want to say about that is it's a clue for you. If you begin to see gifts in the loss, is a clue for you. It's not something that we should offer to someone else. I see this as a gift for you. If that person's ready, that person will begin to see it. Don't interfere with someone else's process by pointing that out, unless that's a conversation they've invited. But the witnessing is important too. It's important to recognize that part of the process of grieving of a jarring event in your life is to have someone say, "This happened, I see you." And no matter what your grief is, it's helpful. That's why we, at least we as women, just to generalize, like to go and chat about what happened. It's a way of getting somebody to say, "You're not crazy, this happened, you're going to be okay." That is something that I also found extremely helpful. It can be very, very repetitive. All right, so healing doesn't mean the loss didn't happen. It means it doesn't control us anymore. So when loss is controlling us, we're still working through the grief. When we feel like we're in control of what we're doing in a day-to-day basis, when we get that control back, we know we're moving forward. Okay. So I want you to think about the loss that you want to draw on today, whatever grief you want to draw on, and maybe it's old. Maybe it's still fresh. It doesn't necessarily need to be a death. As I said, there are lots of things that we have to grieve. Some people grieve the loss of their parents more strongly than others and deal with it for years, and others, it happened and they're ready to move on. So we all do this at our own pace, and it's important not to judge other people with that. So once you have the grief that you want to deal with, what I'd like for you to do is I'm going to give you, rather than the words in 2 minutes that we commonly would do at this point of the process, what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about these 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and think about the grief you want to draw on and figure out if one of these stages, or maybe there's another way you want to describe how you feel, and that's fine too. Some people say there's, I think, 11 or 13. I also saw a list of stages of grief. But however you're feeling about it, but a feeling about it that you want to move through, that you want to move in a more positive direction, get something positive out of. The goal with this drawing is to accept the grief as an opportunity for your growth. And so we're going to look at this piece as a way of clearing this piece and turning it into something we can grow from. So I'm going to give you, let's see, so you've got the 5 stages up here. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to just think about that a little bit and jot some notes for yourself about what you want to draw on, and then we will start. I just have to find my little timer here. Here it is. Okay, does anybody have any questions before I hit the timer? I probably have to go back to the chat. No. Okay, all right, I'll start the timer now, 5 minutes. All right. Does anybody have any questions now that you've had a few minutes to think about your grief and your topic? Okay. All right. So let me switch my camera and I will show you how we're going to do this drawing. So if you have a piece of paper that's not attached to anything, you'll be able to fold it along with me. I'm going to show you how I'm going to fold it. If your paper is attached to a tablet or something, you can either draw a square in the middle or use your imagination. I'll let you decide if you don't want to take it out of the tablet. So what I've done with my piece of paper here, and this is very loose, I didn't measure it all, and I know it's hard to see in the, white on white here, but I folded my paper and I started and I made, it's maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches in on either side, kind of business fold size on the long end. And what we're going for here is we're making a square in the center of our paper that is obviously smaller than the paper itself. So I folded these two sides in, and then I folded in the other two sides. And so with my paper, it's roughly, it's maybe 5 by 6, something like that when I got it done. It's not important, just that it's smaller and that you have more paper to work with after we get it done, or after we work with the smaller piece. So we're going to look at grief with this drawing as a possibility for growth, transformation, and increasing your compassion. And those are the three main things that are recognized as possibilities of growth outside of the very specific things you may learn through the death or loss of someone or something that you care about. All right, so once you have your paper done, I've got my flaps in. I'm just going to focus on the blank piece of paper with the center square, and I'm actually going to fold mine in. I think that it works best to do that for me, just to see the growth. We're going to look at growth with this drawing. So I want you to start by drawing a circle that represents you, and it should take up most of your visible paper. So I will do mine. So that's me. And when I think about my grief around the topic I've chosen and the emotion that I'm dealing with, which on my topic for today, my emotion is anger. But whatever emotion you've selected and whatever grief you've selected, I want you to think about when that emotion is heightened, when it's at its most consuming for you. How much of you does it occupy? How much of your own space does it occupy? When I really let myself think about this thing that I'm grieving, it takes up 90% of my breathing space. So I'm going to say it takes up this much. It's darn close to all of me when I'm really mad. Now, if you look at your circle and your inner circle of this emotion, and think about how much less of you is available for everything else you want to do in your life when this emotion is taking over. So when I am angry about this topic that I'm drawing on, I have almost no capacity to do anything else. This space is probably breathing and brushing my teeth. That's about what I can accomplish when I'm furious about this. So I'm thinking about how much space I let that take up. And I'm going to draw a small catharsis inside that space just to demonstrate or just to release some of the feelings I have around that, around this issue. And if your emotion feels strong enough that a catharsis is helpful for you, and anybody who's new to NeuroGraphica, a catharsis is a scribble, then I encourage you to do that as well. If not, if your feelings are more gentle than that, then just skip this step and we'll just draw lines from there. But I'm pretty angry when I'm angry about this. Okay, I'm angrier than that. Hang on a second. There. Okay, that's more like how angry I am. All right. So now I want you to open your paper up and think about what it would be like if this amount of space, instead of taking away from your capacity to function, was added to your capacity to live. If it were something that you learned and took with you. So how much space, how large would you be? How much more capacity would you have with this new information, this new knowledge? How much more of you, of your heart and soul would exist if you took that inner peace, P-I-E-C-E, not P-E-A-C-E, and maybe turned it into P-E-A-C-E? And so that's what I want you to think about as we begin drawing. If you made a catharsis, we'll start as we usually do with rounding the intersections and pulling lines out and extending out into the world.
Wendy, I have a question.
Yes.
So you're saying if we didn't have the grief, how would we be? Like, I don't understand the outside circle.
So I'm thinking if this piece, if this inner grief were a lesson that I was going to take or a gift from the universe that I was going to learn from, as opposed to something I was just going to fuel anger, which is often what it does for me. If instead of that anger, I was able to find the gift, if that amount of energy were available to me and I was going to be that much wiser, smarter, more compassionate, have that much personal growth, how much bigger would that make me? How much would it increase my capacity? Does that make sense, Laura?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
So as you're rounding, you might be thinking about that. And if you didn't do a catharsis in the center, if your feeling was more gentle than that, then just taking this outer circle and pulling some of the energy out to the outer world and extending this knowledge, this learning all the way through you and out to the borders. If you've got catharsis, do it with the catharsis. If not, just doing it as is. Now, as we're doing this, really think about it as you're rounding these intersections. I want you to make sure and really round generously, not just the intersection, but all the way around and down, incorporating that pain. Each of those intersections is a pain point. I want you to incorporate that pain into your learning. I want you to turn that pain into something you can use, into fuel for your own, for your own compassion. There anybody here, you can put it in the chat if you want, who needs more instruction on the rounding or the lines that we're doing? I didn't ask how much experience people had with NeuroGraphica. Some of the people here are regulars in the Pathfinders group that meets several Saturdays a month. And I opened this session up for more broadly, so some of you are not regular members of the Pathfinders. As you're drawing, if you get insights, get information about your own growth or your own transformation or any other insights as you're drawing, take a moment to jot those on a piece of paper or the back of your paper. This large circle represents the new, wiser, more compassionate you. And we want to make sure and connect it to the borders of your page, which represent the outside world, which will impact your growth and also benefit from it. So that's what we're symbolizing when we connect to the edge of the paper. Each of the neural lines represents a thought and a connection. So again, if you get some clarity about what your connections are, Make a note of that. As you get a little further into your drawing, if you want to add shapes to the outside of your drawing, either augmenting your own energy or anything outside the circle would be considered a resource, something that supports you on your journey. So if you want to acknowledge that or add it to your drawing, you can do that too with shapes outside the circle.
So would it make sense to have resources between ourselves in the middle and the outside circle that are enabling us to get there and see that?
Yeah, I like that idea. That's a really good idea. So she's suggesting shapes that maybe are in here that are helping you um, develop that growth, to look at this loss as an opportunity. Um, so I really like that idea, Kate. I think I'm going to add a square for NeuroGraphica in here.
Mhm. As I look at your picture inside your catharsis, I see a person. How do I put it? It kind of looks like a star. There's a circle above, a body, two arms. Okay, the one just to the left of that. The smaller
For the
circle is
little
there.
one.
Yep. And then from there you have two arms, and then
Oh yeah,
yeah,
on a
and
surfboard.
yeah, and spreading out and taking the wind. Yeah,
All right, I love it.
it's
Oh, and
yeah.
that's even right side up.
Mm.
It is important to go through the emotions, um, the stages of grief as you're grieving something. Um, it it is important not to deny yourself those feelings before you move through it. You can't get straight to the learning and skip the sadness.
Well, I feel nailed. But I wanted to ask if you're willing to share about putting a shape within the picture.
This,
Yes, ma'am.
explaining that. Okay. So in NeuroGraphica, squares represent stability, triangles represent change or action, circles represent harmony. And so I am, by adding this shape from my old self or my current self to my new self, I'm using this as a resource to help me get from here to here. So I am this square for me, I'll go ahead and put letters in here, represents NeuroGraphica. And that's one of the tools that I use to get from furious to acceptance and to what the growth opportunities are with what's occurred. Does that
Thank
answer your
you.
question?
Yeah, I think so. You said squares were stability, circles were harmony, and triangles
Triangles
were.
are action or change. So leadership would be a triangle. Triangles can also be danger or kind of caution. But those aren't things we typically think of as adding to a drawing, except in very specific circumstances. And so depending on where you are, so I'm at the anger stage with what I'm drawing. If you're at the depressed stage of your grief journey that you're drawing about, you might want triangles to help give you to help you move forward, to give you some momentum. So that's where a triangle would come in that situation. That's what's popping in my head. Um, yes, Angela wrote it in there. So thinking carefully about what, and people will add other shapes, but typically those other shapes are, we think of those in NeuroGraphica as being made up of circles, squares, and triangles. So some combination of that.
Thank you.
Yep. And neurocomposition is where we talk about all that. There's my sales pitch for the call. I'm adding a triangle in between my two circles that's extending out of the largest circle. For me, this is representing my intent, my stated desire to grow from all experiences rather than be stuck.
Hmm. I understand that it's not a part of classic NeuroGraphica to label everything, but I'm finding it very helpful, my drawings, to go ahead and label. So I know what I'm doing. So I'm writing all over mine.
I agree. I have increasingly been writing on mine as well. Pavel frowns on that, but I find it very helpful. Some other things to think about with your lines, straight lines, and I don't necessarily mean straight like a pencil straight, but lines that don't have any flexibility represent more tension. And so in NeuroGraphica, we can add some give or some wiggle to the lines as a way to represent flexibility, which is an important part of growth and acceptance, and dealing with loss and change.
Wendy,
Yes.
one question. My mom passed away 5 weeks ago, and after many years of suffering, all I can feel is relief and acceptance. I believe that the other stages I went through while she was alive and
Yes.
so taken care of, she couldn't do anything by herself. So this is what I'm drawing about, because I don't want to invent any stage that I'm not feeling, you know.
Right.
Uh,
That's an important point that you're making, that with an expected death, or when someone is older or unwell, we do a
yeah,
lot of these stages earlier before the
during
person dies,
during their life.
during their
Yes,
lifetime. Exactly.
yes,
Yes. And you may be more at peace with either an expected death, one that you were prepared for,
yeah,
or when someone's older and it's a natural part of living, for sure.
yeah. Okay, thank you. I need to leave in a few minutes, so thank
It
you
was
so very much
it was very good to
for
see you
this
again,
session.
Sarah. I'm
And
glad
you
you
too.
came.
I hope that I will see the rest of it on YouTube.
Okay.
Sleep well, dear friend.
Thank you, and be well, all of you. Thank you.
I'm drawing a very large, irregular semicircle at the bottom of my paper. For those of you who haven't drawn with me before, to represent Earth, so that I'm grounding myself. Not something you need to do, but you can, and it's something I often do when I draw myself on a drawing. And I'm going to do the same thing at the top of my paper, representing source. In this drawing, for me, source is also a reminder that that no matter how bad the event is, how negatively I would rate it, there's always opportunity for growth, and it's always a learning opportunity.
Whether we're ready to see it or not.
Exactly.
I imagine that sometimes it's harder to put in source there than others.
Yes, I'm sure that's true.
Mm.
So when are you done drawing lines on a NeuroGraphica drawing is an individual choice. Some people like lots of lines, lots of connection, and other people like their drawings to be more sparse. There's not a right and wrong on that. So it's done when you say it's done. And of course, you can always add more lines later. We've been going at this an hour, so I'm going to start adding color. And again, if anybody's new, color is how we add emotion to the drawing. NeuroGraphica is transparent, as we're sometimes reminded. So you can color one color right on top of another just to show that they're both there. All right, I'm gonna add my field lines. Field lines, again, for anybody who's new, field lines represent universal energy. It is energy that is stronger than us, ideally goes through us, as represented on our drawings, to indicate the support and intention of the universe to help carry us through. Universe, source, whatever words work for you. Field lines are more bold, thicker than your other lines. They should stand out. You're rounding the field lines to your other lines. Remember to do it generously as a way to symbolically connect to this universal energy, to accept support. Okay, and the last piece of the drawing is the affixing. And the affixing is the information, translates into the focal point of artwork in the more conventional sense, but is the information you want to walk away with in the drawing. So typically a circle, but it can be another shape. And it could be the original circle, it could be the new larger circle, it could be something else, one of the other shapes that's supporting you, or something entirely different. It's whatever moves you. Circle's more like a pumpkin. Pretend it's a circle. I am going to just add a little bit of yellow shading outside my circle. That's just my own interpretation. It's not part of NeuroGraphica. It's just what I want to do to help make it stand out. All right, I'm going to call that done. So that was our drawing on grief. We often share our drawings at the end in the Pathfinders group and talk about them and what we learned, and some people share and some people don't. The group meets 3 Saturdays a month at 1 o'clock Eastern time, and I'd love for you to come check it out. That was an example of the kind of thing that we do. If you go to my website, WendingPath, WENDING, WendingPath.com, you can sign up for Pathfinders there. Thanks so much.